Hello and welcome to Full Disclosure, a podcast project conceived entirely to let me spend more time than I'd ever get on the radio with interesting people, which is certainly a description that fits this week's guest, Alex James.
Hello, James.
Hello, Alex. It says on my notes, musician and cheesemaker, but this barely scratches the surface.
I was at a dinner party a while ago and somebody said, I'm a doctor. And I thought, that's a one-word thing, saying, yeah.
But you have successfully straddled not just these, but also author.
Well, I basically do everything that monks used to do. Because people said, cheese and music, that's weird, but it's not. Monks were doing music, singing in the morning, making cheese, and also festivals.
Yes,
but festivals were all originally.
When did you realise this monastic heritage?
I think some point during the last year when it was just all descending into total mayhem.
You cling to that notion of some sort of historical precedent.
Just wanted to get back to my monastery, basically.
Just to go full circle, the Brewen Abbey is just around the corner from where you are in the Cotswolds, which has got a lovely air to it, hasn't it? A lovely sort of...
that's right around the corner. I used to ride past that on my bike all the way to
This
piano
is what they
lessons.
call research. This is except it's not. So we'll begin at the beginning. It's going to be interesting, this, because yours is a life, parts of which people will know quite a lot about, and parts of which people won't, and it's a life of comebacks in the sense of having dropped off the radar unintentionally, but in a band like Blur, obviously, when you decide to reform and play Hyde Park, everything goes a little bit bonkers.
I think it's a slight source of annoyance to all of us, just like how massive,
Yes,
I think it can be. I can't imagine. Well, actually, because it was 8 years. Since the last, and when we weren't really speaking to each other,
not for reasons of feud.
No, we just drifted apart, really. But most bands do end up kind of hating each other and splitting up, and it'd be an awful thing to be kind of exiled from kind of what put you where you were. Do you know what I mean?
Of course I do. But former colleagues who you really love, you don't keep in touch with when you're not working with them anymore.
It's just blokes, isn't it? I think we all tend to go
true,
deep down rabbit holes of our own.
But it's part of the reason why the new book. Exists, isn't it? I mean, it would probably be slightly thicker if you were all biting chunks out of each other over the rainbow tales from an unexpected year. So we'll begin at the end. How unexpected was it?
Totally. It was about this time last year, just before Christmas. We got a phone call out the blue saying, Wembley, fancy it. And
sorry, why did I say Hyde Park? I was just boasting about how
I think we've done Hyde Park more than anyone else, and
I think that's the last time I saw you. But Wembley
that was 2000. So we'd never done Wembley, so it would be our biggest ever show, and I suppose I wasn't really intending to write a book about it. I mean, if you can tell from reading the book that I had my hands quite full last year. But the very first time Blur kind of went into, we didn't actually split up. We just kind of went into hiatus. It was exactly the point when I got married, and my wife and I bought a farm on our honeymoon. At the exact point that just Blur stopped being a thing, and I didn't really have any transferable skills at all. I was really good at playing the bass and eating cheese, and so I was sort of able to reinvent myself. This is like going way before the birth of social media, but I got a column in the Independent writing about, like, it's basically Clarkson's farm, but in rubbish, being disastrous farming. So and then actually I quite I couldn't say enjoyed writing, but I guess it's a privilege to be. It is a privilege.
Enjoy
to
finishing.
That feeling. But the blank sheet of paper is a terrifying thing. But as a columnist, I kind of recognise what makes a good story. About 3/4 of the way through the year, I thought, you know what? Actually, I don't even know how it ends yet, but this has got a really nice shape to it. So yeah, this initial call, Blur, Wembley, get back together again, yes, and then there's this huge pylon of like we end up doing every weekend throughout the summer. We're doing all the biggest festivals in the world, and then it's all back to my house for another festival, and then my kids are all teenagers, and all they want to do is drink themselves to death. And there's just this kind of this precarious sense of like, I just want to be a monk living in the splendid isolation of my monastery, but there's this just sense of kind of how do you keep a balance. So there was this just nice mix of, I mean, everybody's interested in what happens behind the scenes in touring at that level. So I'm kind of trying to cope with all that mayhem, and it's kind of like a 21st century P.G. Wodehouse novel with its Jeeves
characters,
and there is a kind of new aristocracy, I guess, in that the kids don't want to do the grand tour. It used to be the grand tour, like Venice and the Hanging Gardens. They want to go to Glastonbury and Roskilde and like all the big Summer Sonic in Japan. So it's sort of, there's a mixture of that as well as sort of all the things that kind of people my age struggle with, trying to raise teenage children, expanding waistline, actually trying to trying to run a business,
oscillating waistline.
So I as soon as I started writing, it just started flowing, and I was just laughing my head off. And actually, I can't believe that the last show was almost a year to the day to today, and so it was a mental year. So January, I just locked myself back in my monastery and sat down. So I just to process it all. Actually, it was really kind of sort of medicinal.
I love that. Yeah. And if you can make yourself laugh, then obviously the hope is you'll make other people laugh as well. Let's go right back. There's not a lot, as far as I can tell, in your very early life that points towards where you were likely to end up. Born in 1968 in Boscombe, which is proper seaside, isn't it? It says here, middle-class family showing an early interest in music and the arts.
Well, do you know what? Actually, my granddad was a chef, ran the kitchen at the Royal Bath Hotel, which was in the day like a pretty. It's gone a bit downhill since then. But my first job was actually working for my when I was about 7. Working for my I don't think it'd be allowed anymore. Working for my granddad. So by the time I arrived, my granddad had like a B&B in Boscombe.
Okay.
So I just loved working in the kitchen with him. But my granddad was a chef. I never kind of studied food or nutrition or anything at school. But my dad, when I was about 12, I got home and there was a piano in the living room, and I was like, "What's that?" And he sat down, raised his eyebrows, and just started rattling out some 12-bar blues. I had no idea.
No way.
He could. Yeah. It's amazing. And actually, he passed away during COVID, and he had dementia. But like, he played the piano right, even when he didn't know what my name was. He played. It's amazing how deep music goes in, and apparently it's a really, really good thing for you. You know, like playing chess uses a lot of your brain.
Yes.
But music makes that. Look, music uses so much more of your brain than anything else we do, because it's motor control with your fingers, and there's emotion, and there's kind of a lot of maths in there. So it's left brain.
Even the bass.
Yeah.
That was a very inappropriate joke.
Somebody said, are you a musician? I said, well, bass player's kind of musician's best friend, really.
Well, I don't know. Nowhere without bass. What about your own musical development? Did it begin that day? I like the romance of this.
Do you know what? Christmas carols were like the first thing that really actually singing the descant harmonies. In the Christmas carols in the school choir. Every year I come back to the. It's a bit like Blur, the Christmas songs. They kind of go away for a bit, and then you kind of play. It's still good to hear Last Christmas at this stage.
It's a bit of a descant on song too, isn't there? In a way, it's a sort of
absolutely, yeah. But I come back. Particularly the kind of the canon of great Christmas carols.
Yes.
They're so ingrained. We kind of forget what they're incredible, great. They're great works of art. Like some of them are really. We kind of we know what literature was like. We got literature going back, and our architecture going back, and art going back thousands of years. But nobody really knows what music sounded like, sort of more than a few hundred years ago. And we wish you a Merry Christmas and God rest ye merry gentlemen. They're ancient tunes. And actually, and I've got this really brilliant songbook. It's the best Christmas songbook ever. It's called. It's got like the guitar the chord boxes in, and it's got everything from like Boney M, Mary's Boy Child, and George and Andrew giving it the beans of Last Christmas, and alongside all the great classics. And actually, every year I come back to them, and I'm like, wow, the harmonic structure. They're just wonderful. So actually, yeah, like Christmas carols, I think that was
your
really
gateway music.
The girl that I really was in love with in junior school, and that hits hard, doesn't it? She was in the choir as well. So singing the Descant harmonies with her in front of all the mums and dads, that was it. I knew what I wanted to do then.
Happy days. What else from childhood? So working with your granddad in the local B&B. Yeah, it was a happy home, I think.
Yeah, very much so. I mean, people say, how do you keep your kids sane? And I'm not, being in this big ass band, but I'm actually they keep me sane. I mean, I was lucky. I had a privileged upbringing, and there's really only one kind of privilege. I know rich people who've had really messed up upbringings. Blue bloods who've had disastrous. My mum and dad loved each other, and they put me and my sister first, and so and that's kind of what I've tried to do. With my darling wife and my darling children.
I think you're right, actually. I mean, so obviously life can be easier or harder, but if you've got that as your bedrock, then you're golden.
So I was blessed in living, but Bournemouth still. I'm so proud of. I can't not watch how Bournemouth get on. The story of that football team over the last since Eddie Howe took over in the minus 18 season of 2009. It's because I used to go and watch them as a kid, and they were it was a ball and chain. But no, I love going. I'll always go back there. I love it. But it did have the vestiges of a kind of upper crust as a kid. I was just walking here through Leicester Square. There's a Tolkien premiere on tonight. They're just rolling out the red carpet. Tolkien retired to Bournemouth.
Did he? Yeah. From Worcester, I think. I didn't know that.
Yeah.
So it was very genteel then, wasn't it?
It was just clinging on to its grand.
When you were young.
Just
to go completely off-piste, I think this is part of Brexit. Because I think if in those old seaside towns, Bournemouth's not the best example of it actually, but it's certainly in places like Great Yarmouth and Margate and the Kent coast.
Yeah.
You can still see the times when the gentility would arrive from the whole of the country because there weren't any package holidays.
No aeroplanes.
So the hotels would have chefs like your granddad in them. They'd have French chefs and there'd be European royalty.
Actually, they had to have French chefs, male French chefs. They had to be French. So my granddad was the sous chef. So
right, there you go. So you still have that sense of my town, my rundown seaside town, having been the centre of the universe once, and that's how you play into that sense of making Yarmouth great again.
I love it. I love it.
It's my pet theory. But Bournemouth is because Bournemouth's always
Premier League. I mean,
But what about school? How did you get on at school?
Yeah, I mean, I was. Until O levels. Absolutely aced it, and then. A levels was the first big disaster in my life. Actually, so actually they were some of that. Because I was in a band in the sixth form, and Bournemouth has all these incredible nightclubs because obviously it's a big. It's actually in the summertime they've got a real stag and hen. Even then it was lively in the summer, but on a wet Wednesday in February there'd be these state of the art nightclubs.
Yeah, right, okay,
and we've got a band. They'd let you play. Sometimes we'd be the only people in there. So it was sort of like a night at the museum type thing. Like just me and my mates, and it was like it was our house. I've such fond memories of those days.
When did you first pick up a guitar then?
I was actually in a band before I had. What
were you doing?
I don't know.
I've
joined a band, and we'd made T-shirts with the name on, and actually wanted to play keyboards, which. a Korg Poly 800. That was I just wanted one. So and then when keyboard marketing was like to teenagers in the 80s, it was they really knew how to push your buttons. So, but it was just that they were £600, and that was just like way out of the price range. So fortunately, there was a second-hand Fender Precision copy for sale in a shop called Southbourne Exchange and Mart in Folkestone, just around the corner from where I was born. And so that was all that was that Father Christmas could afford for my. So it was actually my 16th birthday. I got a bass. I got the amp for Christmas.
How big's the gap? How big's the gap?
It's only a month.
But actually, how different history could have been.
Actually, I was naughty at Christmas, so I wasn't allowed to have the hadn't allowed to have the amp till I redeemed myself. But I did. I knew where they'd hidden it, so I would go up there and practice. I think that was really, really lucky because the great thing about the bass is because I have quite a short attention span, and I think if you want to play the guitar or the piano, I think there's more of a need, or keyboards, there's more of a need to kind of be classic. You kind of have to have some sort of proper structured training. But bass, you can literally just hack it. It's one note at a time, and often the simpler the better, and you can kind of learn. You can't really learn key. Well, maybe some of those Human League records you could learn to play keyboards by playing along to them. But bass, you really it's hackable. I just spent months playing along to Blue Monday.
So basically. You had, a short attention span, but if you were doing something that you loved, you could immerse yourself in it.
Yes, totally. Yeah, if I wasn't getting very far, it would be like, ugh, no, I don't get it. But the fact that I could
and you could feel progress. So I didn't know so you can have solitary moments with the bass. You can.
I think
not as you get better and bigger.
Actually, in lockdown we had. I booked. I've been trying to get Nile Rodgers to do Feastival since we started it, and his old manager Merck came for lunch, and he's a vegan, so I did him spent ages all morning making these falafels as nice as I could, and he came for lunch and sealed the deal, nailed it, and he gave me a box set of everything Niall's done on vinyl. I mean, what a gift! And then the next month, lockdown happened, and all festivals were cancelled. But there was a kind of moratorium. Was it a moratorium? There was an agreement. There was a tacit agreement between all festival organisers, because nailing down the headliners. There's so many festivals and so few bands. Everyone was like, well, let's just stick with who we've got. Because everyone had headliners. Let's just stick with who we've got until this blows over.
Oh, that's nice.
So I'd kind of also the falafels. I'd also kind of said, and can I play bass?
Yeah.
Actually, it was quite good that I had an extra year to practice, because I spent so long in lockdown just playing along to those. To Bernard Edwards' bass playing. Johnny Marr said something wonderful about Chic. I mean, I do think they're the best band I've ever heard. Johnny Marr said when you hear them playing together, it sounds like friends. And I thought that was and it's so true. But it's complete. I mean, I do play the bass like a white kid from Bournemouth, and so playing it. But it was just a completely different. But it was. I learned so much from doing that. And
so what becomes clear there is that you are and were, and you probably reject the term, especially with that comment about being a white kid from Bournemouth. But you're a muso. I mean, you loved your music from quite an early age, I think.
Yeah, I do tend to get kind of. It makes me cry a lot.
Does it?
It does. It really gets me. Yeah, it really does.
I know you put bands together at school. You got your first guitar when you were 16. Were you already dreaming of being a rock star?
I mean, everybody was. When I mean, it's football or rock star or bust. Really, they were really. But there's always been a sense of enchantment about the whole Blur situation, actually, and so I hope that's I wanted to reflect that in the title.
The line about sounding like friends probably fits, doesn't it?
Absolutely, but it is a bit bonkers, because I went to college in London.
Hang on, we've jumped ahead. How badly did you do in your A levels exactly?
I got an N.
That's
an
extraordinary.
N in physics.
How did you manage that? Why were you doing physics?
I don't even know what N stands for.
Not graded?
Yeah, not graded. I think.
Oh.
Yeah.
Were you expecting these sort of results?
No, I know. I'd been like, kind of Oxbridge kind of entrance
so was
exams.
It music?
Music
or women?
It was both. Yeah, and snakebite. Yeah.
But this didn't go down well at home, presumably.
No, it was, and looking back, it was a precarious time. But I took a gap year and resat physics and scraped a D. Yeah.
Well done.
But and then ended up at this college called Goldsmiths that just which was the only one that would take me.
Right. To do French.
To do French. Yeah. Which
quite a Renaissance man. Physics, French, music.
Well, my kids are making those choices now. I've got twins making those choices now, and I think that was the hardest time of my life, harder than Wonderwall. That was like try just like because you've got there's so much happening to you at that girls and
hardest to stay in control.
Exactly.
Right.
It was, who knows what they want to do? Who knows what they want? I mean, I knew I wanted to be in a band.
Oh, I see what you mean. Yes.
So
the fear of making the wrong choices.
Well, so I did French because I guess a lot of the Over the Rainbow is sort of trying to paint a picture of kind of glamour in some sense, and I just did, glamour is anything that makes like real life seem a bit ordinary. So I was wandering around the West End now. The West End's glamorous. Christmas is glamorous. The whole of France I found glamorous as a teenager, because going there as a kid, when I was a kid, Britain was really still reeling from the effects of the Second World War had on our food culture. Bacon was rationed until 1956 or something. So my dad was like in his mid-20s.
It's mad, isn't it, when you think of it like that?
We ran out of food, and going to France in those days wasn't like going to another country. It was going to another world altogether, and. England's come an incredibly long way in a really short space of time, and actually nothing's changed in France. They're still eating from the same menu then as they are now. But everybody in France eats like a king. Bishops and postmen eat from the same menu. That is a wonderful.
We did a thing on the radio show about lunches, school lunches, and someone just sent in the thing. For the picture on her fridge of the menu that the kids have at primary school in France, and it was absolutely unbelievable.
On French, so I wasn't there. I was hooked. Went on holiday. I was hooked already, and then went on a French exchange. Went to the French. They were drinking wine at lunch at this. I mean, this is a nation of people who are happy to go out to buy fresh bread twice a day and go home at lunchtime to buy some cheese and cook themselves lunch.
It is a different world, and so in a way you're describing. Being drawn, you gravitate towards the light. When you say glamour, yes. I'm seeing light.
Well, yeah. So I did French because it was the thing.
Were you good at it?
Maybe. No, actually, there was a point when. We got our first gig booked in Birmingham on the day that I got my results at the end of the second year, and it wasn't good. In fact, the examiner had written, "Is the candidate lucid?" In red pen. There was a lot of red pen. And ended up at this college that wasn't first choice, which just happened to be home to have the coolest art department in the world at that time. Like Damien Hirst was there, but the very first person I saw when I arrived at the halls of residence, I was getting out of my parents' car holding a guitar, and there was someone else getting out of his parents' car holding a guitar, and it was Graham. It was like literally arrived in London. Wow, and we totally clocked each other instantly.
That's fantastic.
It's crazy. And then he introduced me to Damon and Dave, and the first time we were...
How did he know them?
They were already in a band, rubbish band.
Okay. The three of them were?
Yeah, there was another couple of guys in there, but okay. Dave, who's always...
so they were second years? Or
no,
but they knew knew each other before.
They know they'd been in a band from Colchester together. But Damon had kind of got a job as a T-boy at a studio and was but they kind of sensed the company, the people who run the studio has kind of sensed his potential, so he was allowed to use the studio when there was no other bookings there. So it was the very last day of the first term. So almost exactly this time of year.
Wow.
Like the last day of college on the first term, Graham said, we fired the bass player. Do you want to come to the studio with Damon?
When had they heard you play? How had they heard you play?
Well, Graham and I both had Graham had the room above me,
right?
And we both had acoustic guitar. So he hadn't. I mean,
but he knew.
used to play along to Pixies songs, and actually, there was a piano in the hall, so we used to spend a lot of time playing.
And how much? So how much of it was? What would the word be? A fit of being simpatico rather than just like you felt right together.
Yeah, well, I definitely felt simpatico with Graham,
yeah.
But Damon was completely the opposite, you know. Because Graham took me to the studio to meet him, and he was like, "Yeah, you've been in a recording studio before." I was like, "No, I haven't actually." And then he played me this song. He said, "Yeah, what do you think?" So I said, "Well, you know, you sound like a drama school band. You need to sound like an art school band." And I think that's maybe what.
What did that mean? What did that
I don't know. I don't know. They needed a bass player.
Yes.
So anyway,
and was that the first time the four of you were?
No, I was invited to come back with a bass, and we literally wrote "She's So High," which is a song we were still playing this summer at the very first rehearsal. So it was totally instant. You know, arriving in London, here's Graham, here's first rehearsal, bang, there's a song that's still resonating, you know, all decades later. And it's mad. It's totally mad. And such a huge part of who I am. And, you know, part of my kind of daily consciousness, it's in my subconscious, it's in there, and we become isolated. And so it was just a wonderful, magical thing, all reconnecting all those years.
And to know that everything would still fit.
I just remember on the M40 in the car on the way to the studio on the first morning, just absolutely cacking it, thinking, you know, what band A doesn't hate each other at this stage? No, 30,
really, you've said that twice now. You honestly thought
no bands do, but it just tends to be, you know, it is like a marriage with four people in it, and you know, anything that goes on this long is going to have peaks and troughs, but. Well, not so much that as like what actually the really true. What band has made a half decent record 35 years, and that was the really terrifying thing.
Yeah.
And I got there and waited for Graham and Damon to turn up as usual, and and they got there like an hour later, 12. And by lunchtime, we had a master take in the bag on the first, and it was just again, like, so it's either completely impossible or totally effortless. And I remember saying to Dave at lunchtime, how did we do that? And he said, we've been doing it for 30 years, and anything's easy if you do it for 30 years.
Well, except probably. That the very first time you did it was easy.
Well, true.
So there's something alchemy like going on.
So I think we were so lucky to have that initial chemistry, and then to be able to, because we spent hours and hours every day playing for like 15 years. It was all any of us did was play together, and it is still the same four people.
And so you've got the muscle memory.
It's crazy how
the foundations, the bottom. It's all there.
So it was, and you know, a big star today is probably bigger than ever. You know, I'd heard them measuring Taylor Swift's concerts on the Richter scale, and Adele is bigger than the Beatles and the Stones put together. But it's a different thing. It's a front person with a backing band, but there's nothing to really touch for people who've been doing it for it. Just when it locks in, it's a magical goosebumps thing. And all the other stuff I had going on, strangely, like I think maybe it's slightly different for singers and guitar players. They kind of feel like they need, if they haven't suffered, they haven't turned up for work. But as a bass player, it's just like riding a bike downhill. It's pure, just purely joyous. I mean, just a wonderful, effortless thing that's kind of energizing. And actually, the Wembley weekend, I had that down as a kind of weekend off. It does. You know, I suppose you don't work music, you play music. You know, and I think you have to come to it with that kind of sense of lightheartedness. But it's a very, you know, when there's so much riding on it, that can be tricky. But I think somehow or other, we just, maybe because we don't do it very often. It was only like 20 shows last year or something, all in, including playing the Ballad of Darren, the new album.
And was it? I don't want to over romanticize it, but it's already pretty romantic, isn't it? With that twin double experience of I mean, that's the Hollywood moment, isn't it? As you're both putting your guitars out the back of the boot and your eyes meet across a crowded car park, and then you'd lay down your first track with minutes of it's beautiful. But does everything, do all your fears dissipate the minute you play the first note, or is it when you see each other, or is it when you get halfway through a song? When do you let yourself relax?
I didn't know how the first meeting before Christmas to discuss, can we be in a room together? Can we do Wembley?
Yeah.
There's a little bit of orcs, but it's like seeing an
ex.
Exactly.
Who you didn't hate.
Really,
an ex
yes,
who you didn't hate.
yeah. Three of them at once.
Well, you've always been.
So there was like 5 minutes of what have you been so Albarn's like what have you been doing then, like it's a job interview or something. Graham's doing a film score for Jez Butterworth, and he's got a record coming out, and Roundtree's doing a film score for Disney, and he's got a record coming out, and they all look at me and I'm like, well, actually I'm trying to make a really, really big frazzle.
Which is not a figure of speech.
Actually true.
It's all about the E numbers.
But that's another story. But so the formalities quickly dispensed with, and all the gear was set up, and we played She's So High. That was the first thing we did. We listened to the because somehow Graham had a cassette of a cassette recording. He was the only one who had the recording, and somehow or other we had it, and we listened from that rehearsal.
Oh.
And we were like, oh my god! And actually,
what did it sound like? Object? Can you be objective? You can't.
It needed some production work, but no, it had. You could tell it. Well, you could tell it was. It couldn't have been any other band. You could tell it was Blur straight away. Graham's doing something really angular. I'm doing some kind of upside down loopy nonsense. Albarn's and their harmonies are locked in as well. I mean, I remember the first time at that first rehearsal, just Damon singing that line and Graham saying, "I'll do a falsetto harmony," and I was like, "Oh, my Bournemouth band didn't have that." No. And I'm just going back to the descant thing. Harmony's magic. It is a magical thing. And,
so human, isn't it? So such raw humanity in a harmony.
And Graham is, they're both geniuses. They're the brilliant foils for each other. They really.
So how? I mean, did you know, or did you suspect in that moment that you were in the midst of something very special, or not? Or is that a bit too easy?
The great thing about playing music is that you
always
feels like I'm in the best band in the world.
Yeah.
So yes, it did feel like that, but that's the kind of no guarantee that anyone else is going to think that.
Jump ahead, because by the time you were, and then we'll jump back again. By the time you were having that original meeting, and you're very honest about this, you were probably in more need of the commercial input than the other three were. You'd had a tough lockdown, really tough. Lockdown.
The Farm was a wonderful place. I mean, I actually have kind of genuine pangs of nostalgia for Deepest, Darkest Lockdown, because it was great.
Yes.
The Farm was beautiful, and it was silent, but none of the family hustles worked whatsoever. No festival, no restaurants and delis open to sell cheese in. The other real cash flow kicker was that song 2. Blur's biggest song. It's literally no one can score a goal anywhere in the world without that song getting. I mean, there's a real culture of people going, I wrote that, and all you need is a musicologist report saying these two things are similar. It turned out that it was the song they'd actually just copied it and given
Seriously?
it to. Yeah. But the head of Sony, my publisher, saying he's having to defend claims like all the time. People there's one guy every Taylor Swift, that was me. Yeah, Adele, that was me. So the royalties it was
a constant nice little earner whenever the football was on, whenever they were playing football.
Song 2 is it's just it's everywhere, and that was sorted. But I mean, it was trying to the cost of running. We all still had all the cost of running the business, but none of so I was still kind of digging myself out of that hole. I mean, it wasn't. I mean, I may have played it up a little bit but I just
But you were worried. I was stressed. Certainly,
I was digging more. I was digging my way out of trouble, but I was digging.
Yeah. Okay.
But the thing is with the Blur, I could, because it was an album and a tour. I basically had to clear out.
When did you decide to do the album?
It was at that same meeting, but we
Really?
didn't. Well, we thought we'll keep it secret because, just in case it's crap.
Sure, but you committed to having a proper crack at it.
Yes, absolutely. But how we kept it a secret, I've got no idea because the kids are like, "Where are you going?" I'm like, "Nowhere." And they invested in us. And then so when it was actually in the bag and it was all right, I was like, I told it's actually Geronimo, my eldest, came to the playback. It was really, Damien was really, really gracious. It was great, and he absolutely loved it, and so he told his brothers, and then his brother told Ollie at school, and he said, "No, but Ollie's not going to tell anyone." He said, "Oh, my wife is this,"
Could feel it. How beautiful!
But so somehow he managed to keep it under wraps.
And with the children being the ages that they are, this was their first taste of you being a proper rock star.
Yeah, so they were in short trousers last time out, 2015. Yeah, I remember Hyde Park, like absolutely. In the last song, The Universal, there's a little pause before the last instrumental chorus kicks in. And the whole of Hyde Park was like arms aloft, ecstatic.
I think I was there.
It was a proper moment.
It was.
I was just like, oh fuck, thank goodness. Because there's a real Pavlov thing to that song as well. Because I can have a drink in a minute. It's all. And I glanced over to the side of the stage where I knew the kids were. Where the kids were, and they were all like sound asleep under the monitor desk in a little pile of bare legs and brightly coloured ear defenders.
Just completely whacked.
It's like way past their bedtime. They had a massive day in London. It was just too much for them. So I really didn't know. What they'd make of it. What's
that? I mean, no, you don't know what it's like to be the child of.
Well, Geronimo had to tolerate, as a teenager, a lot of, Wonderwall, as I did.
Yeah.
But teenage children are even harder to connect with than guitar players and singers. Actually, really. The best I could hope for would be like shove off fatty. They really.
Well, we should mention that briefly. You did shed a heck of a lot of weight.
I had to. I absolutely had to.
Was that another lockdown consequence?
I think
because you couldn't sell any cheese, so you ate it all.
I'd say, I think we all got better at cooking in lockdown, didn't we? And I live in a food machine. I make cheese, I make cider. I'm surrounded by chefs because we run a Wellbeing Food Festival every summer, so I've got my hands full, often my mouth full as well. And it was a disgrace actually. It was. I was, but you can't point a Super Trooper at a fatso.
You didn't want to do a Vegas era Elvis or anything like that.
Elvis wasn't even that fat.
No, you're right. He wasn't just compared
fatty.
to what he used to be. Like, he was, but
I made Jim Morrison look kind of, young.
How hard was it? How hard was it for people?
God,
for people looking for inspiration.
Oh my God! It was. It's not. Last time Blur got back together, I wore out 2 pairs of running shoes, and then I got some spikes. Actually, my big toenails fell off.
Wow.
But I was too fat to run. And actually, I went to Decathlon. I felt to 2nd of January, I went to Decathlon in Oxford. I said, I need to get some running shoes.
Yeah.
And he said, who for?
That's cold.
That honestly happened. That's how fat I was. But fortunately, Claire, my wife, is a stalwart of kind of She's mean. She's a stalwart of kind of triathlons,
right.
Epic Help for Heroes bike ride. She loves the gym. So we managed to find with the trousers that I wore last time Blur got back together, the Britpop trousers. Found them in a shed, and I hung them up in the office. And I was like, we're going to go to the gym twice a day, every day until these fit. And oh my God, it was.
That's an extraordinary commitment.
There's a hard.
But in your head, you're saying I absolutely have to. I can't not do it.
No, it's just
because otherwise I'm walking.
Otherwise, the legacy is you can't come back as we have to come back like on top of our game.
Yeah.
And the terrifying thing is, it's supposed to be being in a band that makes you leads to excess and mayhem. But this was going to be kind of like a rehab, using rock and roll as rehab.
That's
So it was kind of a bit back to front. And but the thing is that, I mean, it is painful. I never ever want to go to the gym. It's I don't know why.
Boring.
I've often fancy a drink, but you have a drink and then 12 hours later you feel horrendous.
Yes.
Never want to go to the gym, but an hour later you're guaranteed to feel brilliant.
Yeah.
Actually, actually it was horrible. But the great thing about the gym is that, like, unlike making a record at this stage in our career, who knows how that's going to go. But when you're on your 100th burpee, it's working.
Right.
It's guaranteed.
Again, measurable improvement.
It's guaranteed to work.
Got it.
And when you do start, if you haven't been, I literally hadn't been to the gym since before lockdown, and when you do start seeing results actually really, really quickly. So
nice.
it was quite rewarding, and having that hard deadline.
And you met it, and you got into the trail.
Yes.
We'll rewind again. How quickly after that first meeting did the rocket go off? How fast did the?
Well, it was just being able, just because we were 20, 21, so getting into a minibus and driving to Birmingham on a Sunday night with our mate Nutty Nev driving, it just felt like that. It felt like we were off then, and having never there was one wonderful weekend where actually it was that weekend that I got my French language exam paper with is the candidate lucid.
The candidate lucid. That's another. There's a title there for another memoir, isn't there?
She So High had just come out, and it had a little bit of kind of evening radio play, and we got to
What was that like? First time.
So actually, that was the next single really did.
Okay.
I remember getting on the tour bus on the bus for the meeting in the Columbia Hotel in Edgware Road, and getting on the bus, and There's No Other Way coming on the radio as we were getting on the bus to go to our first gig. We were like, "Wow, this is weird." Who said it was a really funny feeling?
Yeah.
Because normally at that point, up until then, the plugger from the label would be like, "Mark Goodyear's playing your record tonight on the radio at 7:00," and we'd all like go around from one of each other's houses and listen, see what he said about it. But so it had a couple of plays on the radio, but we got to Dudley. JB's venue, it's still there. I think, I really hope. Please tell me that hasn't gone. And there was this kind of hairy guy who was very pleased to see us. Kept bringing us Newcastle Brown, and the place just filled up. And he kept bringing us more Newcastle Brown. We drank all the Newcastle Brown. We went on stage. And that was the first time we absolutely smashed it. Like we literally blew the roof off. There's people on the stage, and actually, we met 2 or 3 people at that gig who still work for the band now, like Smoggy, Darren, who the album's named after. He was there that night, and Stuart, who's a big part of the Blur family. They were there, and are still here now with us. But that it just being able to go somewhere we'd never been with very, very disappointing French results, and like, oh my, so There's No Other. She's So High wasn't a hit. It was number 48, which we thought that was brilliant at the time. But the record company clearly weren't so impressed. But There's No Other Way was a genuine hit. So and then actually it did get there was a kind of Manchester invasion of America going on at that time, and actually Jesus Jones, the other band on our tiny little indie label, were number 1 in America. And so the label,
the momentum was there.
The label paid. Blur. Well, first manager, as is often the case, wasn't a great businessman, but the band were really truly facing bankruptcy. Like, couldn't pay our VAT, which you have to go to prison for. I didn't even know what VAT was at that stage. But we were committed to because Jesus Jones were number 1 in America. SBK, the label, thought, great, well, let's get that next band on the label over. Booked us up for a 13-week tour of the States so that we could get a merchandise advance on that deal, which sort all our problems out. But we arrived in America, in New York, with this kind of with There's No Other Way, the day that Nevermind came out and which was like, and to that point American rock music had been in the doldrums for years. It was all kind of big LA poodles, like a bit ridiculous, but everything changed the day that record came out. And that was a kind of funny tour because everyone thought we were from Manchester, because it did sound. I mean, it was. Fair mistake. But there was suddenly with that album, disaffected white American youth had a look, a style, a sound, a hero,
a messiah.
So. I mean, I still actually years later I've met people saying, man, I saw you in Trenton, New Jersey, 1993, best gig of my life. The gigs were great, but it was just.
But you're conscious of the shadow that's been cast.
But just not relevant to America at that time.
Yeah, okay.
And then we got home from that massive, epic 13-week American tour to grunge being taking everything over.
Yeah.
So and actually a huge backlash again of going by the music press. It was just as fierce as the Twitter trolls. And he kind of often more kind of more
personal, focused.
Well, just sort of cleverer people doing it.
Yeah.
Ouch.
Yes. Yeah. Okay.
So there was a very deliberate attempt to do something. I think until that point we hadn't really travelled, but there's nothing like travel to give you a sense of where you're from. And I mean, actually, it was all Albarn's idea, but the second album, Modern Life is Rubbish, was very, very deliberately British.
Okay.
And using British influences, British imagery. And I remember the record company coming down halfway through a bass take, a song called Star Shaped, on that record. And I was literally halfway, and they said, "Stop! This is British pop. You are mad. You need to go and re-record this album with Butch Vig, who produced the Nirvana album." And we were like, no. And then they were like, "This is your absolute last chance."
Really?
And we again, Christmas keeps coming up, but it was just before Christmas. I remember because Damon's mate Paddy from drama school played. It was dressed up as Father Christmas and gave away copies of the Wassailing Song, which is Blur's most valuable vinyl.
Is
actually,
it?
Yeah.
Right.
My mum just showed me a copy the other day. So, hang on to that one, Mum. We played with the Salvation Army and Paddy dressed up as Father Christmas at the Hibernian Club in Fulham, next to the studio where we were recording. That was where we premiered Modern Life is Rubbish, and that.
So you ignored the record company?
Yes, but that gig did not get one review. It didn't get
Why was
reviewed
that? Because
it was we were so kind of. Were
you scared? Did you think you'd had your moment?
No, because I think we kept by the time we because we kept actually everyone in the band's got a work ethic actually, and we kept working, and by the time we recorded Modern Life is Rubbish and it had been kind of mixed and we played it, we'd already written some of the songs on part. We were starting to kick in. We had to the end, and I think possibly Girls and Boys. I mean that was the moment it really kicked off was the tide started to turn after there's one thing worse than a band.
You believe.
Yes, we all felt and that's what makes you want to get up in the morning.
That's really special. So you could easily have been blown off course.
Well,
by indifference or negativity.
You've got to fight for your right to do your thing.
I wonder if you could have done that on your own, or whether it needs to have four people in lockstep with each other.
I think Damon is very, very determined, and actually, the record company were. Being able to they kind of, it was formative, the fact that they were kind of saying no, do it. Like, it made us realise that actually this is what we want, the way we want to do it.
And then as you say,
and so I remember doing a show in Italy and loads of really cool Italian kids turning up on Vespas, like Italian mods, and it was like, oh, we're tapping into something here. But it was Roskilde. right at the end of Modern Life is Rubbish. And there's a festival called Holtzfred, still going on now, and it's midsummer, and it doesn't really get. We were on at midnight, and it doesn't really get dark. It just sort of goes sort of light blue. It's magical, and. We absolutely we got there, and there was more. The media wanted to talk to us more. You could feel the tide was turning. The media, there was lots of PR to do before the show, and we went on and we absolutely smashed it. And the promoter was like, "You've got to go back on and do another one." It was like, "Well, actually, we've just let's do Girls and Boys." We do it like we literally just written it like that week or something, we went back on the Swedes in summertime. They're really happy. They're singing this song about a frog that gets lost that they sing in Sweden. They go do 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 do. They still sing it now. It's great. They were singing that. They were happy. And Roundtree just started banging the bass drum. That 120 BPM bass drum that like locks all disco music down. And Damon kicked in with the keyboard. And the whole crowd was going up and down, bouncy, bouncy, bouncy. And I slammed in with the bass, and a bra hit me in the face. I looked over at Damon as a pair of knickers hit him, and that was the point. Sweden, 1993, summer 1993, bang.
Blast off.
And nothing was ever the same after that.
How fantastic. When did you realise you could write? Not music, but prose.
Oh God, I don't think you ever feel like you can do either. No, I mean, I as I said when the first time I was out of a job,
it was just the column. That was the first time since school that you'd ever tried to.
I did like writing.
Okay.
Well, like as discussed, like it when pressing switching send.
Yeah. Being a writer, having written.
Exactly. It just makes you feel same as like expressing yourself makes you feel slightly less rubbish about everything.
I go a bit scattergun now as we near the end. So I was interested when you talked about the work ethic and spending 15 years essentially playing together all day, because that includes the period.
Well, work at playing.
Well, I know.
And it doesn't. That's the thing. I think it doesn't fit. So I try and tell my kids like do stuff. Just go towards the light. Do stuff that you're that you're interested in if you can, because then it doesn't feel like work. But then you realise in the last 15 years I've had like 2 hours sleep.
Yeah.
Because I've been working.
Of course. But again, work that you love.
Yes. No. Exactly.
But I was struck by the fact that when I was the world's worst show business editor and you were in the midst of your Groucho Club period, you were still putting in the yards in the rehearsal room and in the studio.
Yes, yeah. Well, a
lot of people wouldn't realise that.
I'm trying to teach my kids how to party responsibly,
yes.
And it's, the bottom line is get the job done.
Yeah.
As long as you're getting the job done, then go as hard as you like.
And did you enjoy that period? I mean, you certainly seemed to.
Oh my word! Yeah. It was. As I said, I think maybe bass players just don't feel the need to suffer in the way.
The Guardian said he was never as messy as Pete Doherty, but in his capacity as the dandyish, elegantly wasted alcoholic genius of Soho, who blew £1 million on champagne through the course of his party boy tenure, he was distinctly, naughty.
Well, that's a feather in my cap from The Guardian. You see, I thought I was doing... I literally... I kind of... When I wrote my first book, I kind of made that up about champagne. But actually, it wasn't that far off the truth. But I did think I'd wasted a lot of money on champagne. But now I'm making champagne. We've had the Great British Cheese Explosion.
Yes.
But now we're into the champagne supernova now.
Very well done.
It's an incredible story. No English wine commercially available anywhere at all in 1990. None. You couldn't buy English wine. It was hobbyists and amateurs. Now, it's particularly English sparkling wine. It's up there with the world's finest.
And that's partly to do with the climate, is it? As much as the developing industry. You've got your Britpop brute, which is
yes, mate. Yes,
in that space, creamy, long and toasty. It says here. So there's science here, though, Alex. Because isn't there? Because I met you. You don't know this because it was during my period as the world's worst show business editor. I came to your house in Covent Garden 100 years ago, and when you were doing the astronomy, when you were fascinated by the space stuff. We did.
Oh,
a piece.
yes.
The only way I could get to a member of Blur was by telling the PR I was fascinated by all the space. So there's science here. There's science in cheese. There's science in space. There's science. So actually, albeit that you got an N, the physics is you are.
Yeah, Feast of All, we like to embrace geekery.
Yeah. Where did that come from? Just you were sitting there one day and thought, why don't I have a festival? That knits together all my passions.
I was literally sitting on a farm in a venue making cheese and music, thinking, what do I do next? When Jamie Oliver called saying, "Hey, man,
let's do this."
yeah. So he was the impetus actually, but it kind of all made perfect sense. Yeah,
and it's back up and running.
Yeah. No, it's going from strength to strength. Yeah, so, I mean that is.
Have you ever had ambitions? Have you ever had boxes you wanted to tick, like a number one in America, or simple ambitions? Or a best-selling cheese, or a nice cheese.
Yeah, all that stuff. Yeah,
yeah. But you have it framed in your head as a guy, like the trousers on the wall.
Yes, I suppose so. Yeah, yeah. Number one in America would be nice, wouldn't it?
So what's left? You just like what do you kind of look at?
I quite enjoyed. Now the kids are a bit older.
Yeah.
Like going out with the band was quite nice actually last year. So I don't know. Might. We had Ministry of Sound Classical at Festival. Have you seen that?
Yes. No, I haven't seen it. I've heard it.
It was absolutely mind-blowing.
Graham Park does something similar as well, doesn't he? With the Hacienda Classics.
Yes, yeah. We had them as well.
Yeah.
But I'm wondering if like a Britpop classical thing might work. That's what I'm thinking. Maybe could you?
And you did. So when we were talking about what the other three were doing when you got back together, their side projects had been largely musical. Apart from trying to get into Parliament, of course, which is not musical by any. So, but your side projects have not. Have you never really been tempted to play with other people, do more chic? Notwithstanding.
No, well, I mean, I worked as a songwriter and producer, but I more as not as a kind of touring thing. I love working with new artists.
So the book's out now, Over the Rainbow, which will make a lovely Christmas present for fans of all of your output. Fans of Blur, fans of cheese, fans of British wine. Alex James, thank you.
Thank you, James. What a pleasure. Cheers, man. Nice.